This is the Cooler Master TD500 Max case, or rather I should say solution, because this really isn't a case at all. Rather, it's actually a solution where you're able to get multiple components at once that all are going to come pre-assembled for you to go and make the building process quite easy. See, this takes a concept out of an old playbook called Barebones PCs. Basically, manufacturers would sell pre-assembled systems that were basically about 60% there as far as the hardware. So you get a case, power supply, cooling solution, maybe a motherboard, and a couple other small things, maybe fans and stuff like that. But instead, you would actually have to still buy your separate CPU, RAM, storage, and GPU, depending on your likings. And this was actually a pretty cool concept because it allowed for those manufacturers to sell some of their components a little bit cheaper, allowing it to be a better entry market for some people that were maybe a little less comfortable with the whole DIY PC space. See, that concept really comes back with this solution of a case. See, instead of just being the case itself, you also get a 360mm AIO liquid cooler along with a 850 watt ATX 3.0 compliant power supply. And what's also cool, because this was all done, they were able to do a lot of the pre-wiring that was kind of necessary to go ahead and make the process even easier, and they have a really cool solution for how the power cables are actually getting passed through. So I think the best way to review a case like this, because I want to actually experience it, let's go ahead and do a quick build in the system, get it assembled, see what it's like, and then I can give you guys my evaluation both on its cooling performance as well as if I would recommend it and who to. See, to actually build out this system, we actually don't need a whole lot. We just need a motherboard, CPU, RAM, and storage for the main part of our system, as well as a GPU, and that's pretty much it to go ahead and round up the system. So I already have this motherboard off my test bench ready to go, so that makes that process quite easy. So let's go ahead and install this into the case, get it mounted with the cooling solution, start wiring things up, and see what this actually looks like. So to get started, I'm gonna go ahead and just take off this back panel, which is also, what's one thing that's kind of nice about this case is it does come in this really nice gray finish that's only available in this Max series of cases. And it was one of the special distinctions of this case along with some of the components that it comes with. So what we're going to do is pull out all the foam inserts because there is some to go ahead and make sure that things don't fall apart during transit. And then we can go ahead and undo these couple twist ties that are basically just holding the foam in around the actual CPU cooler. Because once we get that out of the way, it should be pretty easy just to go ahead and throw that motherboard in and mount up the cooler. Because we don't really have to do a whole lot in this case. So we got the actual packaging off there. We'll pull out all of the twist ties. Like I normally say, I usually don't recommend manufacturers put these in because they are metal on the inside. When they do deteriorate, if they're not fully removed, you can result in damage to your system. So it's definitely something I would like to see change on the next iteration. So we'll go ahead and pull the rest of those out on the back. There's a number of them. And one of the things that we can kind of see here as we get started is that along the back, we can see how they're doing the pass-throughs for power. So basically, your 24-pin, your two 8-pins, as well as another 8-pin for your PCIe, all have a pass-through to go ahead and have these nice short cable runs. They're gonna look super clean once everything is finally assembled. So that's kind of how they're doing it. They basically have a little connector where everything is running right off the power supply into that connector, and that's what's passing through to the other side. You do have the option still for additional cables. There's still normal routing as well, but that's part, or at least the main components will already have their pre-wiring done for you, which does make things quite nice. It's kind of like if you were to pre-wire things before cable extensions. And I do think with custom cable extensions, this case could look really, really cool because it's really easy just to have them at a very short distance if you can get some custom length. And I hope maybe Cooler Master offers that. That would be something really cool to see. Anyways, let's go ahead and continue on. There's some stuff in here. So we got all of our cables that we're gonna need to go ahead and get these out because these are gonna be all of our front panel connectors. And then we also have our cooler away. So let's go ahead and get this motherboard installed because that's probably the first thing we got to do. So let me go ahead and grab a couple screws. One of the cool things about this case is that there's a hidden screw compartment in the bottom of the case. So we can go ahead and just grab a screw just like that, hook it up on our screwdriver, and we can go ahead and get this mounted down. And that's actually a pretty cool solution. So one of the nice things that sometimes higher end cases do is they have a metal peg, which means you Don't absolutely have to lay your system completely flat to go ahead and get it installed, because basically once you get it on that center peg, it's really easy just to hold everything in place without having to have everything, you know, moving around on you. So we'll go ahead and hold that down. We'll get our center screw in, and now that motherboard's not going anywhere. Now with that in, let's go ahead and put the rest of the screws in, and then I'll catch up with you after that. And just like that, that's our last screw. And now this motherboard is ready to go. So let's go ahead and we can start the pre-wiring process, which I've always done. Basically, we're just gonna run all the cables through. It's a pretty simple process. We do have quite a few cables that we're gonna have to cable manage. At least for the you know, front panel connectors and stuff like that. It's not too bad. I think there's you know, USB 3.0, USB 3.1, or 3.2 now. And then we also have a couple other small connectors for HD audio, as well as our front panel connectors. So let's go ahead and run those around front. And then from there, we can go ahead and mount this cooler. And then these all can be tucked down below. They're not gonna be touched probably at all. And then let's go ahead and just start running some of these cables. So HD audio is always gonna go in that bottom corner. So we'll go ahead and just pass that through. I'll plug it in on this side, which makes the process quite easy. And then next thing for something like this is we can also pass through our USB type, or USB 3.0 cable. We'll also pass through the actual Type-C cable as well. And then our front panel, which I would have liked to see these connectors be all combined. That's actually been something a number of manufacturers have been doing. It's a nice feature. I know it's not as compatible with every single motherboard, but pretty much any modern board all use the same layout. So something to keep in mind, another area of possible improvement for the next generation. And then we also need to go ahead and run this, you know, digital RGB header down to the bottom as well. This way, that's out of the way, and we can go ahead and plug the rest of this in. We also got a fan header, which we have available at the bottom. So let's go ahead and flip this around. I'll get you guys closer up as I get these plugged in. Now that we're up and close, we can go ahead and get everything plugged in. See, right now, I would say that this building experience has been pretty fast. It does help that I had that motherboard already pre-assembled, but nothing seems to be, you know, anything more difficult. You know, it's a little easier just because everything's already there. I didn't have to get the radiator installed any earlier than, you know, I'd like to. So that's kind of nice. So that's kind of one of the big benefits I've seen so far. You know, I'm gonna really be surprised, you know, and see how this pre-wiring is going to do with the actual 24 pin as well as those 8-pin EPS connectors, along with, you know, everything else. I also would have liked to see all the connectors possibly in this kind of like modular interface. I think it would have been pretty cool to see, but that's definitely something, you know, we can always look for in maybe a future iteration. So let me go ahead and fix these cables. So these are the actual cables that come through, you know, through the pass-through. So they're nice, all black. They're not really, you know, any kind of fancy sleeving. That's kind of a plastic sleeving, but it's not too bad, and it's actually going to look pretty clean because they're perfect length for basically the standard location for these cables. So let's go ahead and get these all plugged in and wired up, except for the PCIe cable, which we're going to wait on putting the GPU in until a little bit later. Starting off with the CPU cables, my recommendation is probably just plugging into the motherboard first and then running them over to the actual connectors, the pass-through connectors. This way you can get them exactly how you want them with kind of the training to go ahead and give you that perfect look. So looking at the actual cables themselves, I'm not the biggest fan so far. I gotta see how the 24 pin looks. They're just not the right length or the right direction. I normally would like these to see maybe the opposite direction for the connectors so that you don't have this kind of like rotation that has to go across because there's not really enough room for those cables to run properly. But that also could be the motherboard itself and not the actual cables, you know, that are being used here. So, you know, that's just another consideration that we do have to keep in mind. You know, as this is a full-size ATX case, there is plenty of room, and working in here has been pretty easy. So I don't think it's going to be, you know, a problem at all for somebody to, you know, maybe do their first system in this type of fashion. It's not really that kind of, you know, concerning for me, and I think it's actually easier, especially with having these cables kind of already set. And I do like how this 24 pin comes out. We might need to move these cable combs up a little just to kind of train the wires better. But It does look good, and if these were custom cables, a custom sleeve, these would look incredible just because of how short the runs are, and they don't even have to be all that complex. Again, we will leave the 8-pin. We'll use a GPU that has an 8-pin. I think we have a 4070 that we're gonna go ahead and plug in, but we'll go ahead and just run that through right now, just so it's sitting and ready to go for us when we're ready. The next step at this point is actually getting the cooler ready. So basically we need to add some thermal paste. They do want you to use their applicator pad, which basically just makes sure that you're getting the proper amount to go ahead and cover that CPU fully. We can use that just for this testing. And then basically we'll go ahead and wire up these couple cables, as well as getting the mounting hardware all installed. And one thing that was really nice is that the mounting hardware that comes with the actual cooler is all bagged perfectly with little labels, which I just appreciate because it's way easier to find things when things are labeled like this. So I mounted the bracket on the actual CPU cooler itself. Let's go ahead and get the actual assembly for the back plate for the actual cooler on the motherboard. This way it'll be really easy once we mount it. I don't want to put any thermal paste on until we have that, just so it's not getting anywhere. That's always a great move to kind of go that way when you're dealing with these types of solutions. So to do that, what we'll do is we'll take our bracket for LGA 1700 and we'll go ahead and bring this around back. We'll set it in its proper place. And then what I like to do is just hold it and reach around. And sometimes I like to do this while I'm building the actual motherboard out. It's another way you can do it to kind of make things easier. And we'll just go ahead and screw down each of the 4 corners. And we are good there. So now what we're gonna do is let's go ahead and add that thermal paste. The way we're gonna do that, typically how you use these applicators is basically you take the thermal paste, you put it over the area, and you kind of just let it all fill up, just like that. You can sometimes swipe it in. I probably wouldn't, in this type of circumstance, just because we do want to get plenty of paste, especially for this LGA 1700 CPU. Once that's on, you can then go ahead and just peel the actual cover off. This will give you kind of these I believe that's 7 dots right there of thermal paste. You can set that off to the side, and then you can take your cooler, which you're going to want to do, and take it and get that mounted onto those brackets that we just installed. And then you can take the actual nuts that the manufacturer supplied, in this case Cooler Master. This is the same with basically all these other manufacturers. They all do it basically identical way. And I usually like just to get the 2 of the corners in, and then I'll come back with my actual screwdriver and add the other 2 corners and tighten everything down. So let's go ahead and grab my electric screwdriver. And now like that, we now have a cooler properly mounted. Now all we gotta do is just get these cables wired. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get the RGB connector. There is one RGB connector up top, so we'll get that plugged in. What we'll probably do is route that out the back and bring it back in. And we'll do the same thing with our CPU fan cable, which we'll go ahead and just plug in. And then what we'll do is we'll take both of these cables and run them out the back, kind of just get them out of the way, and we can tie those down later. So we'll probably run them something like that. This way, it's kind of out of the way and out of mind. So just like that, the only thing we have left to do is pull off the plastic on the actual pump top, and let's get our GPU installed and we should be good to go. Now finishing this build, I do have this 4070. This was actually one of the Spider-Man editions from Zotac. So this is a pretty easy install. We just got to get a couple screws out and get this plugged in. And we can show you exactly what that 8-pin actually looks like being wired like it is. Because that is one way you can do it. You can also use a 12-pin for modern GPUs up to 450 watts. So that's up to probably like a 4080 or like a 4070 TI Super. That should also be available to be able to work with this hardware, just to keep that in mind. Now we got those out, let's go ahead and take our GPU and slot that right into place. And then we can throw our back plate right on top and get the actual GPU plugged in with the cable. This is a 6+2 pin cable. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't put the 12 12 pin high power. I mean, I understand why, just because of the burning problems. But you know, or at least have 2 of them or 3 of them, because most modern GPUs are more than a single 8 pin, especially at the cost of what this case or solution kind of cost. So it's something to keep in mind here, where you're only getting a single 8 pin with the pass-through, which is kind of one of the big selling points that at least I, really like about this case. You do have that 12 pin included if you do want to use it, but that's just something to keep in mind. Another really nice piece of included hardware are these cable combs for the actual tubing. So we can go ahead and install a couple of these. This way we can kind of get some nice spread on these tubes as they go down, and we can kind of keep them nice and managed. So we'll go ahead and pop these both in. And I like how the Cooler Master logo is just so subtle on these, which is just really nice to see. So yeah, there we go. And that looks like the system is now finished. We can just put the cover back on there. Let's go ahead and get the system fired up. And just like that, the build in the TD500 Max case from Cooler Master is actually complete. So let's go ahead and just fire it up. Make sure everything works. Let's test out the cooling solution, see what the RGB looks like, and see how everything just kind of came together. And I'll give you guys my overall roundup on how I feel about this case going forward. And after letting Cinebench run, our multi-core score was 1959, which for a 14700K is actually really good, and one of the better scores I've gotten when it comes to testing CPU coolers. Because what happens is, if your CPU is overheating, you're gonna start getting some thermal throttling, limiting clocks, thus limiting the overall performance and your score. So that was actually really well done. And if we look at the temperatures from HW Info, we definitely see that the package did get quite warm. We did hit a peak of 96 degrees, but we did average around 81 degrees Celsius, which is pretty good, especially for a stress test like that. That means we were seeing some peaks, but it was able to kind of keep things in an acceptable range. 96 is definitely on the higher end, but outside of some of the top end liquid coolers on the market, that's not too far off. Especially compared to even like the Liquid Freezer 3, which I recently reviewed that you guys can check out. That's definitely the best cooler out there on the market right now for 360 millimeter liquid coolers. But this, for being a built-in solution, is really good and is going to be adequate for most users. 14700K, on AMD's side of things, probably just about any CPU should be fine. Those are running a little bit cooler currently. So it's definitely a great system for cooling wise. So let me go ahead and give you guys my overall roundup. With that said, do I recommend the TD500 Max from Cooler Master? See, like I said at the beginning, this isn't a case, it's a solution. So it really matters if the solution actually meets your needs. So for the average DIY PC builder, somebody that's built a PC before, I'd probably say move over to something different. Even go with other Cooler Master products. They make other great solutions. Buy the components separately, assemble it yourself. Part of the experience of building a PC is putting it together. So that's one aspect to consider. For those users, probably just buy the components separate. You're going to be able to get the system at a fairly, equivalent price. Because if we do price things out, power supply of this quality, it's an 80 plus gold, 850 watt ATX 3.0 power supply from a manufacturer like Cooler Master is probably going to be $125. A cooler like this, a 360 millimeter AIO liquid cooler with RGB lighting, probably another $125 to $150. So you're somewhere between, $250 to $275 just right there. And then you got a case that's probably somewhere in the $125 to $150 range as well. So it's not like you're getting an amazing deal here. Rather, it's the convenience factor and some of the add-ons. So for instance, I love the pass-through for the power cables. So that's a really nice thing. As well as the inclusion of the little chamber for holding all your screws is pretty cool, especially not having a bunch of leftovers. Definitely something, I like to see, especially as somebody who works on computers all the time. The case, outside of that, nothing too special. It's built well. I love the color. This is their gray. It's a new gray that they're just doing just for the series. There's not a ton of cable management. It's not really necessary with the pass-throughs, but there are some limitations for sure. And that's why I would say for those consumers, maybe look elsewhere or do something yourself. Look at buying all the other hardware that kind of was used to build this out on your own, because that may be a better solution. However, if you are a first-time PC builder, or you're not super familiar with the PC building experience, or just want an easier solution, you're paying for convenience here. Really, you're not going to get anything spectacular. You're not getting an amazing deal. Rather, you're getting the parts maybe just a little bit cheaper, but it's already pre-assembled with some cool features. So for those users, it actually makes a lot of sense because all you really have to do is prep your motherboard and put in your GPU. Because once your motherboard's prepped, you slot that in, plug everything in, and then slot your GPU in, and there's really not anything else you have to do besides just, wire things up. But that's really simple. So for newer PC builders, this is probably the best solution. Like I said, it's a great bare bones system, and I'm happy that Cooler Master is actually making some progress here, bringing back some things that I was a huge fan of really when I got into PCs to begin with. So this is definitely a really cool solution, and I'm super excited to see what Cooler Master does with the next iteration. I hope to see maybe a better value, something in the maybe $350 range with all these same components, just so we can get a little bit better value out of buying things pre-assembled, because Cooler Master definitely benefits from shipping all three things together at once already assembled. So that's just my thoughts on it. But and if you guys are looking for something like this, I will also have another solution as well in the video description down below that you can consider if you do want to look at maybe doing it yourself. I'll have everything as well as all the parts I use listed down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a like and subscribe for more content like this, and check out this video here of another PC case review.